do men get man caves, but women don't get dame dens? Are men really so oppressed in the company of women that they need somewhere to hibernate? Yes, said my husband Ian, and he proceeded to design what he now fondly calls the escape pod. At first I was annoyed by the name. What exactly was he escaping from? He smiled as if the answer was too obvious to say aloud. Me. He was escaping from me. Rubber stamping the escape pod was probably part of the reason Ian needed an escape pod after only 3 years of marriage, because why did everything require my rubber stamp? And B, my final attempt to cure Ian of his other mode of escape, pot. I should clarify that Ian has a prescription for pot, which makes it legal in California, and he got his prescription from an OBGYN, which should be an indication of what a racket this whole business has become. I think she prescribed it for insomnia, how staying up all night watching action movies and eating barbecued ribs is a cure for insomnia. I'm unclear. But maybe I'll understand more when we get the results of his pap smear. I have nothing against pot smokers per se, but even Ian's friends will tell you that when Ian smokes pot, he doesn't become more fun, he becomes inanimate. I once thought the problem wasn't the pot, but the element of surprise. I never knew exactly whom I was coming home to, Ian or this other guy, his catatonic cousin. So ever the creative problem solver, I suggested Friday High Day. I know what I'm like to live with. That way Ian could partake once a week and I could plan ahead to see friends, thereby avoiding his altered state, alter ego altogether. Despite the catchy name, Friday High Day did not take off. Ian felt one designated day a week was too limiting, and I thought it wasn't limiting enough. The way I figured it, by the time we were married 7 years, I would have spent one entire year with his catatonic cousin, who, by the way, I wouldn't have married. I'm not even sure I would have invited him to the wedding. In retrospect, I might have been slightly less tolerant at this time in our lives because we were trying to have a baby. If you ever want to feel completely powerless, here's how. Be a woman. That's just step one, but... 2, decide you'd like to wait until you meet the right guy to have a baby. If you're lucky, you might meet him just before you're 40, in my case, right before. Marry him, then try to have the baby you waited to have because you wanted to fall in love first. When the escape pod was conceived, Ian and I had been trying to conceive a baby for 3 years. So I finally asked Ian if he could curb his enthusiasm for pot just while we were trying IVF. I made this request after my first night of progesterone injections. I was already nervous about the needle, which seemed much longer than necessary, when I noticed Ian staring a little too intently at the liquid in the syringe. Are you high? I asked. He said he had forgotten that we were starting the shots that night, the shot that he was supposed to stick into my upper buttock in a smooth dart-like motion. And he might have had a few bites of ice cream. Pot ice cream. With his prescription from the OBGYN, Ian could go to the pharmacy, yes, spelled like farm, and get pot in various forms, hot butter, a lollipop, buzz nana bread, because apparently good old-fashioned marijuana was no longer good enough. Pot was much more powerful now. It could be vaporized, used as a cooking aid, or made into a sundae. I gave myself the shot that night, which was no small feat. And the next morning I tried to appeal to Ian on a scientific level. There is evidence showing that pot affects sperm count and sperm motility, which could be why we're having problems conceiving. What I did not say was that if Ian was any indication, his stone sperm were not likely to get off the couch, let alone make a baby. On our next visit to the fertility clinic, Ian asked our doctor if smoking pot once in a while might indeed be affecting his sperm count. The doctor said no. This was a male doctor. I'm not saying that his gender had anything to do with the veracity of his answer, but it might have had something to do with the fact that he seemed amused rather than offended by Ian's "I told you so" jig that followed. The doctor explained that their process involved spinning down the good, sober sperm, and apparently there were enough of those that Ian's occasional habit would not hinder our ability to have a baby. I was starting to hate doctors and husbands. Why wasn't it enough that I would have liked him to stop, that it would have meant something to me if he gave because I had given up alcohol, red meat, sushi, soft cheese, skinny jeans, and 3 years of my life trying to have this fucking baby. Why couldn't he give up weed? He said he didn't understand why I cared so much. I tried to explain that he wasn't really present when he was high. Exactly, he said. That's what I like about it. He reminded me that he didn't watch sports, which is how most married men escape. He didn't go to strip bars. He didn't drink much. He didn't play golf. So once in a while, he smoked pot. What's the big deal? He asked. You do things I don't like. Wait, what? We were now on very thin ice because I was about to ask a question that I might not want the answer to, but I forged ahead. I asked him to name anything he didn't like about me, because unlike him, I would be willing to change to make him happy. He replied that he would never ask me to give up anything, especially something I enjoyed. Smart answer. This is why you should never marry a lawyer. But I took constitutional law at Northwestern, so I said, you wouldn't ask because there's nothing I do that bothers you in the same way. He considered for a minute and then muttered, no, there was something. I braced myself. Snacking, snoring, reality TV. I felt that was completely different. In fact, it wasn't until I found myself up late at night watching Little Chocolatiers, a TLC show about two little people who were married and run a chocolate shop. It was inexplicably canceled. But I realized Ian might be right. Reality TV might be my drug of choice. But just as there are various forms of pot, there are various forms of reality TV, I explained, and some shows are good for you. Some inspire you to dream big and master a trade, like Project Runway, Top Chef, and HBO's Cat House. Surely Ian didn't want me to stop watching Cat House, the show about the gals at the Moonlight Bunny Ranch brothel in Nevada. That was benefiting both of us. And some programs show you the power of transformation, like The Biggest Loser, which I did not mention I sometimes watch while eating dinner. And some shows you just watch because everyone else is watching, like The Amazing Race, The Voice, American Idol, and Dancing with the Stars. I don't watch all of those shows all the time. I certainly don't bother watching the results shows. Ian was concerned I knew the term results shows. He also said that lately I was watching so much intervention, I might need an intervention. But that show, I told him, was full of valuable cautionary tales for parents to be. For example, from intervention, I learned that if you don't ever tell your kid you love him, he will turn to meth. And when he does, you have to let him hit rock bottom. Then you and the whole extended family, including his ex-girlfriend who met him when he was homeless and still somehow ended up being disappointed. You have to read him a letter itemizing how he has hurt you, and when he leaves the room shouting, "This is bullshit," that's when you tell him you love him. And because he has never heard those words from you, he will crumble into your arms and go to rehab and get his life together. Thus, I Mumford, we should say "I love you" often to our child, but if we don't, we can use it later for leverage. Ian wasn't sure what point I was making anymore, and frankly, neither was I. This was one of those discussions that might have gone better if Ian was high. So I quoted from the Bible, Extreme Makeover Home Edition. I said, "Honey, there are sick children living with mold. A girl who can't be exposed to sunlight, needing special windows so she can move from room to room. Children who only have torsos, who need elevators so they don't have to elbow their way up the stairs. And then there's you, a perfectly healthy man, living in a beautiful home who needs a man cave, and to get into that man cave, he would like a bookcase to slide open when you remove a certain book." Ian conceded the secret sliding door was optional. What wasn't optional, apparently, was the fact that we both needed an escape from time to time. All married people do. All of America does, measured by the popularity of reality shows. And if I was any indication of the State of the Union, marital and national, viewership is up when you're down. The more powerless you feel over your personal life, the more you need an escape. Regardless of whose avoidance strategy was healthier, mine is not illegal in any states, I would like to add, we could both see that either, taken to excess, had the potential to hurt us more than heal us. So we both cut back, and Ian agreed to occasionally watch reality shows and not make fun of them with me when he was high. And I agreed to occasionally watch action movies with him in the escape pod when he wasn't. It's not a perfect solution. I still sometimes wish Ian would give up pot completely, and he still wishes I didn't wish wish that, but that's the reality of marriage. And despite these occasional rifts, I know I would not want to be married to anyone else, not even for a week. I know this because I watch Wife Swap.